Thank you, Georgetown. I'm also director of our Bentley Center for Religion, Peace, and World Affairs and a professor in our School of Foreign Service. And it's really wearing three hats. I'm delighted to welcome you to today's conversation with Reverend Francisco Baril of the Society of Jesus on the topic, Seeking Truth, the Challenges and Achievements of Colombia's Truth Commission. On behalf of our co-sponsors today, the Georgetown Americas Institute and the Keeler School of Global Affairs at the University of Notre Dame. Father, let me thank you for spending this time with us this afternoon. We look forward to hearing about your experience as chair of Colombia's Truth Commission, instituted, of course, after the 2016 peace accords to investigate human rights violations and shed light on the causes and origins of the conflict. The final report will give us the details, but it certainly sounds like a massive undertaking, completed just last summer, a major milestone in the history of Colombia and indeed in the history of our hemisphere. So just a couple of words of a formal introduction before the conversation gets started. Francisco Baril of the Society of Jesus is a Colombian Jesuit priest, economist, and philosopher, widely recognized for his work on peace building and reconciliation. He has produced several books on issues of public ethics, social conflict, and development. Forgive the Spanish pronunciation. Species of Plants in 1987 and Perfecta from 2018. After studying philosophy, theology, and economics in his native Colombia, following a conducted graduate study at the London School of Economics and a PhD in economics from Sorbonne. University of Colombia, they received in 2016. Also, he was with us in Georgetown, participating in the community as a visiting fellow of our Georgetown Institute. Thank you for please excuse me as I have to run to another obligation. I'd like to ask you to welcome Lara to the museum that will be conducting conversation on the part of the Institute. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Thank you for coming here today. I had a brief introduction about the Institute, but I think everyone's eager here to learn from Father Dudu. We will start with a wide-ranging conversation between Father Dudu and myself. I'll ask him some questions, and then 30 minutes before the end of the event, we will open it up for Q&A from the audience. Because we are at a university, we give presidents to students. So if I don't call your name, it's because there's a student who wants to ask a question. So I apologize beforehand. We will touch on the history and context of the violence in Colombia, the purpose and the role of the Truth Commission that he led, the challenges and achievements of the commission, the methodology, the results, and finally, what comes next, which I'm Colombian, and it's the burning question in all meanings. Before we had lunch with students, and I introduced Father Dudu as a titan for peace. Speaking personally, he is light of hope in the middle of a very difficult country. He has given a lot of people hope and search for truth. So at lunch, and many students who were at lunch and I hear a very clear shed. So that's how important the work that Father Dudu is in Colombia. I thought I would to start by looking back at 2016, 2017, when the Truth Commission was created. For those here that perhaps don't have the knowledge and the context, could you tell us what led to the creation of the commission and why Colombia needed the Truth Commission to begin with? Who are the victims and the perpetrators of violence in Colombia? And that distinction as well.
Thank you, Denise. And thanks to you, everybody.
time for me, and so I feel very grateful to be with you, having you here present. Thank you for your interest in what is going on in Colombia, and also your interest for peace and for truth everywhere. Your question. As you know, Colombia has gone through internal conflict 60 years. A very hard and difficult confrontation among citizens. And basically because problems that were political and social problems that we have to solve by means of political discussions and political negotiations. Unfortunately, the both sides, the state and the opposition, in this case, the radical opposition, decided to solve the problem by an unresolved confrontation that never ended. It started in the times of the Cold War, and so it was mixed with the idea that we have to contribute to fighting communism everywhere. And in several important ways, we try especially to stop guerrillas. President Barco, for instance, was very effective in some of the groups of the guerrilla, but especially the FARC guerrilla, which by large was the largest, the most powerful guerrilla in the continent, came to the end of 2016 in arms. And this is finally the agreement between the Colombian state and the FARC guerrilla. And the commission is the result of this agreement. They created the system for truth, peace, and reconciliation. And they constituted three different institutions. The special jurisdiction for peace, with the judiciary part, they have the responsibility of avoiding impunity. The Truth Commission, we are the Truth Commission, or we were the Truth Commission till last summer. And okay, we were constituted as a totally independent institution, independent for the president and the government, independent from the Congress, and independent from the judiciary system. And also a constitutional institution. We have a lot of moral authority and also institutional authority. And that helps us the possibility of confronting many difficult issues in the country. And I think that could be also a good example for other countries. I have to tell you that our obligation was to go for the historical truth, the political truth, in terms of the political party, the economic, and also the moral truth, the responsibilities because of the conflict. And we have also to increase or to support the dignity of the victims, to eliminate the perpetrators or the responsible, to create reconciliation finally, to present recommendations for the non-repetition of the conflict. I would like to stress the importance of the truth. About the what is truth. I invite you really to face the problems with definition, certain decision. I would like to talk after that around that. Really, the situation in Colombia because of the country was a tragedy. 121, 22 exactly the numbers. I don't know exactly, but it's a very approximation. About 122 young Colombians now passed away late, 20 hours.
120,000 young Colombians.
120,000, thank you. 120,000 British dollars in the Latin prison for about 48,000 from the military and the police officers. There are also guerrillas and paramilitaries. But for each person who died in the battlefields, 7 civilians were killed also. So we have about 700,000 people killed because of the war. And we have more than 1 million survivors. 7 million people were displaced because of that. 50,000, more than 50,000 people were kidnapped in the war. Having conversation with women, we were kidnapped for 5 years, 7 years, totally separated with the children, young women, and also deprived from the intimacy because all the time the guerrilla were with them, even when they were taking care of their bodies. It's a humiliating situation. We talk about the military. Some of them years keeping in the jungle of the people from La Maria, church, their city, in Cali. We were in celebration of the music, so it was. And all the people who were in the music, children and the siege were very people by the eye, but nobody really something. Choose easily to these people who are already adults. That should have one value in common. We are living the region only by the running the world. We have more than 120,000 disappeared people. In several places, we have peoples with especially social risk. And that is never appeared. Even 5,000 people who died because of the personal mines. And also nations were destroyed in Colombia. I mean, this is the tragedy of the journey. We want to be contact with appreciate the environmental we need to be in contact with the victims. We receive 70% personal encounters with the victims in the country.
That's a perfect segue to the following question, which is on the methodology. Like, broadly speaking, the commission is set up to shed light on the truth about the decades-long conflict in Colombia. That's a huge effort, 60 years of conflict. How do you gather all the information? So could you describe the methodology used by the commission, how it was structured, the different Casa de la Verdad in the territory, how many commissioners there were, how the discussions between the commissioners of what methodology to follow, and how you decided on the content for the final report?
As I was considering the commission, I have some possibility of restorative because we were 11 commissioners, about 500 people who are working in the commission everywhere. As you said, we have 28 house of truth house in the country. Whereby basic ideas and inside, yes, idea of human understanding of what God truth. And when I put that very simple, first experience, grow, into the contact with the brain. Second, analysis of the experience and from the experience of analysis of the experience.
To clarify the situation, always going from a first subjective approach to an objective, when reality imposed itself, then the affirmation or the negation of evidence when there is not evidence, and finally taking moral decisions. I mean, this is the reality, and it's a drama, it's a tragedy. What are we going to do if we are consistent with ourselves? The first moment was the moment of experience, and I remember it takes a lot from what Pope Francis told us in Colombia. When Pope Francis came to Colombia, just before the starting of the commission, and he had a meeting with several bishops in Colombia. And he told them, if you really want to solve the drama, the tragedy of this country, instead of producing documents, instead of producing pastoral letters, go and put your hands in the bleeding body of your people. And this is what we did. I mean, we went to see the people, listening to the people everywhere, also in 24 countries, where we have exiled Colombians. About 1 million of Colombians during the 60 years abandoned the country because they were, because of the war, all kinds of people, families that were kidnapped and decided to leave the country, judges, military, people from the Patriotic Union, a political party what was completely eliminated in Colombia. Okay, indigenous and so on. Believe me that I'm already told the experience with the victim was very moving, was very hard. I mean, we have a group of psychologists accompany the people in this, and but it is quite a confrontation, especially when you are preparing a meeting between victims and perpetrators. Perpetrators, imagine the guerrillas or the paramilitaries or the military. You have to prepare both sides, and it takes months in many cases in order to do an event really constructive, and especially because you are in face of the television and the country is seeing you there. And there is another reason, because the victims, and this is the second part of the method, we have to go to the explanation, because the victims, they gave us their testimonies. But after giving out their testimonies, they asked us, what happened? Why happened? What happened with us? I mean, how do you explain the suffering or the violence we receive? And the victims, when receiving when entering in contact, when accepting talking with the perpetrators, they don't expect only that the perpetrators recognize their responsibilities. It did not suffice. The man from the guerrillas or the paramilitary said, we recognize that we did the crime. No, people want the responsibilities to present all what really you did against us, why you did it, what were your purposes, your intentions, to give you an idea. A woman kidnapped for 7 years in the jungle. She knows what happened to her. Many of them produce diaries. She knows everything, but she needs the perpetrator telling to the Colombians what they did, every details of the kidnapping. This is very important for the victim, for feeling herself is recognized in her dignity. And it was like this. No? But obviously we received more than 1,000 documents from the organization of the people, and also we were talking with people working in the academy, in the universities, people from CINEP. So we entered in long discussions to try to explain facts and to put facts into patterns, trying to arrive really to evidence, and then to take decisions and to say that publicly the truth we were discovering, without taking into consideration risks or difficulties. And finally, we went to the conclusions on the okay, but at the same time that at the same time when we were producing the report, we decided to make in Colombia a real mobilization of the whole society. Because we consider that as important as the report. And the idea was, we are starting this commission. At the very beginning, there were a lot of reluctance in Colombia to the truth. I mean, to facing the tragedy. And because of this, we decided victims have the right to be listened in this country. And victims, and we have the duty the country see what's real happen here, And little by little, every day, believe me, during 40 months, there was an event in Colombia, somewhere in Colombia, or in the 24 countries around Colombia, there was an event of the truth. Encounters between victims and perpetrators, meetings about the truth, TV shows, theater, continuously. Because of that, there was a real transformation in the country. People started thinking about the reality that had happened in Colombia. And last year, this is very interesting. Last year, when we were in the election of the new president in Colombia, in the first round of the elections, the Colombians elected the 2 candidates that offered total change. There was a feeling we have to change. So they abandoned the traditional candidates, and they selected the 2 that were offering change. Rodolfo Hernandez, who said, I will do change by eliminating corruption in this country, and Petro, who said, I am going to do the change with the total peace. And finally, people elected Petro. And I have to say that Petro received the recommendation of the Truth Commissions, and he's being serious on it. For giving you an idea, our first recommendation was what we call the Great Peace. The Great Peace is we have to start with the reconciliation of the Colombians in a polarized country. And this is a question of culture and transformation, recognition of the other person, and go to make the peace with the other groups that are still in conflict in Colombia, and not to negotiate, but submit to the justice, the traffickers, the trafficant, the narco,
Drug traffickers.
Thank you, the drug traffickers. Petro is doing it. He doesn't talk about great peace, he talks about the total, paz total in Colombia. We ask for a transformation of the security system. This is quite important for us. Look, I remember the military, they were expecting, as a result of the Truth Commission, that we were about to say that they, the Colombian military, were the good guys, and the left-wing people and the guerrillas were the bad guys. But we explained to them that the Truth Commission was not looking for who were the good and who were the bad. We were trying to analyze the conflict, the tragedy, and to try to explain what happened in Colombia and why it happened, and finally to get solutions. I remember one day the staff, all the military staff invited us to a presentation of the Colombian army. I mean, all the power of the Colombian army. It was a day, and you know, conclusion, obviously, after the United States, obviously with enormous, infinite advantage of the United States, but Colombia has, after the United States, the largest, the best equipped, the best trained army in the continent. And I remember when the presentation finished, the admiral or the Navy asked me, because he was behind, asked me, "Father, what do you think of the marvelous?" And I said, "Admiral, I don't understand. How is it that we have this enormous apparatus of security and we have 10 million victims?" And he said, "It is because of you, because you never permit us to win the war against all the enemies." And I reacted and said to him, "No, Admiral, it is because of you. You didn't permit us to make peace in Colombia." And it is because, you know, analyzing the problem in Colombia, you know immediately that a year of war means, meant in Colombia, thousands of people being killed, thousands of survivors, I mean, people being kidnapped. And we ask also the transformation of the army. I have to be very clear. We are not against having an army. We are not against having police officers, but we are convinced that we have to change their moral, their behavior, their attitudes. We need then as people who contribute trust in the society, to respect the way communities have for maintaining tranquility among them, to help when there are contradictions that easily can go for an armed conflict, to contain the society and invite to political solutions and social solutions, just because they have this power that we give just them. They have the weapons. Obviously, this is a big discussion in Colombia. We are in the middle of it. And President Petro accepted the idea. The new Minister of Defense is a champion of human rights in Colombia. We also asked for the inclusion especially of the African Colombians and the indigenous people and the campesinos, and to transform the economic development, doing it from the regions of Colombia with the participation of people. And also we asked for the transformation of the educational system. This is to give you some of the ideas that Petro really has taken very serious in his government. We have also to discuss it, you want in another moment, the difficulties we are going now, because we were expecting the new president, the new president who are about to unite the country. And the country is very, very divided, and the polarization is enormous.
Thank you, Father. You covered a lot of the questions in your remarks, but there's one in particular that we discussed yesterday that you wanted to address, and it was how Colombian society as a whole reacted when they were faced with the truth presented by the commission. And you wanted to talk about things that surprised you and lessons learned and the process of accepting the truth, which is not an easy one. It's not easy as an individual, and it's even harder as a society. So would you want to address that as well?
Well, we encounter, first of all, the resistance or the fear of the truth. This is obviously institutions think that when members of their institutions arrive to be responsible, institutions have fear of losing recognition and reputation. It's far more difficult with the politicians because they protect their image and think in their future. And we have also the denialism. As you know, there are people in Germany that insist today that the Holocaust never occurred, or people in Brazil, in Argentina, in Chile that maintain that disappeared people never occurred in their countries. There is also another problem with the resistance to compassion. I mean, people know the truth. I mean, it is there, and we are presenting the truth, but people doesn't feel affected. Even they protect themselves to any sort of being affected and being involved. And this is also very hard to undercome with people. And also because if you don't feel what is going on with your brothers, with the other people, it's very difficult to have a moral response. One of the things that happened to us, and that happened to people working with the victims, is that you discover that using numbers, using figures, is a way to escaping the truth. When you say, for instance, 4,300 American soldiers died in the American invasion to Iraq, and 300,000 soldiers from Iraq died in the conflict. This is just numbers. The problem entering the truth is go and see. Go to each family. Go to each, he or she, the person who died there. He was a young man. He had dreams. He had dreams. He had illusions. He had anxieties. He had children. He had a wife. What happened to him? He's not a number. And easily when we go to war, we forget, or we forgive what we're talking about. But when you enter into it, there's, when you enter into the truth of the people, the particular, the personal people, and you enter into the situation, the very difficult, confusing situation of the perpetrators, you really are entering into a hell, which is very complicated. And you have to receive also the claiming of the victims, the cry for dignity, and in some cases, they even attack you in the Truth Commission because they are claiming you are not, or they suspect that you belong to one side or the other side. It's really hard, but it's very important. And you discover all the efforts you have to do, ethical effort, to maintain independence, from the ideological viewpoints, the political viewpoints. You see, you want really to hold to the human truth, human. And I would like to insist to it because, in my opinion, the most important question in the history of humanity is the question that we have in the Bible: where is your brother? You remember the history of Cain? Where is your brother? This is far more important than where is God, because it's far more important, or what is happening with religion. No. If you really want to know God, go and answer this question: where is your brother? What is happening? What is happening with each one of these men who have died in the war? Where is your brother? You know, we discovered quickly that truth always have difficulties when power. I mean, when I say power, I mean the state, the government, the military, the guerrillas. In some cases, in the history of humanity, of the history of Occident, you know that even the church have behaved itself as a mundane power. We know this. And I myself, I have to confront very difficult moments with power, with the paramilitaries who try to kill me, and with the guerrillas. But I am not going to enter into specific stories. But I remember, for instance, my friend and lawyer, Alma Rosa Jaramillo. She had the courage of confronting the mayor of Morales, a small town, and the paramilitaries. They were in a business of corruption, and he was torn to pieces with a chainsaw because of confronting the power. Sergio Restrepo, my friend Jesuit, we were together at the novitiate. He was killed in Tierra Alta, thank you, because he was confronting the power of the paramilitaries. And you know, the president of the Truth Commission of Guatemala, Monsignor Giuliani, 2 weeks after the release of the document of the report in Guatemala, he was killed because he was a problem for the powers in Guatemala by the time. And there is a question that usually people, truth seekers, usually present, which is, how do you dare? This is a very uncomfortable question, ¿verdad? How do you dare you consider yourselves as human beings when you know that there are so many people suffering because of the conflict, or what is going on in Colombia, what is going on in the wars everywhere? And here again, there are many, many examples of people like Martin Luther King by the Berrigan brothers, Jesuits, our okay, our Jesuits fellows in El Salvador that were killed. They were asking, "How do you dare?" Or Monsignor Romero, "How do you dare to kill my people?" And they finally they were murdered.
Father, you briefly mentioned the peace process and Petro's government right now in Paz Total. One of the first recommendations of the Truth Commission is to fully implement the 2016 peace agreement. Could you tell us what you see about the implementation? Is it being implemented fully? What have been the roadblocks? And you also mentioned that President Petro completely embraced the recommendations of the Commission. Could you give us your opinion on how the implementation of those recommendations is advancing?
Yeah, Denise, as I told, okay, I was referring before to the way the government received the recommendation and how they are trying to go just in the peace, the transformation of the military, the transformation of the economy, the transformation of education and the inclusion. But obviously, the difficulties is first that when you decided to go for a change, a total change in a country, you never know finally what are you going to, because it's just that you have to do, you have to change so many things, and there is a lot of uncertainty. In my opinion, it's a moment of dialogue, of listening to everybody, and obviously, also it's a moment of containing everybody in the process. And I see, obviously, I see the difficulties of the government and also the limitation of the government. At the beginning, the president offered a dialogue with everybody, but little by little, he's been lost to reign, in this perspective. You need to create confidence to the economy in order to maintain the investment we have in Colombia and to get new investment that we need. You need to create democratic dialogue, especially with any issue, with the people that are concerned in a particular issue. And you need also to go step by step. If you try to take all the problems simultaneously and at the same time, it's very difficult to overcome such amount of difficulties we have in Colombia. And we are going through this situation by the moment being. Back in Colombia, we are not anymore the commission, but we have to feel the responsibility for the victims. I mean, the problem is the problem is human beings, believe me. The problem, the problem is the tragedy. Our idea, we have already little by little starting on a discussion with the businessmen and business women, the business people, with the military, with the Catholic Church, with the politicians, and also with the guerrillas. We feel this necessity enormously because communities, Africans, Colombian communities, the indigenous people, the students, the women organization, LGTB people organization, they are supporting the work. They really want the change, but the difficulties are there in the big entrepreneurs, in the military. How to do? You see what try to explain how to manage the situation.
One more question and I'll open it up for everyone. You have a unique vantage point because from your work in the 4 years, you were able to speak to so many different groups, different Colombians, the elites, the military, the victims, farmers. What would you say unite Colombians? If you were going to find something that unite us as Colombians today, what would that be?
No, in my opinion, we have to come again and again to the human tragedy of the country, suffered by all sides in the country. The right wing, even the extreme right wing, the left wing, people in the middle, everybody in Colombia, every family in some way. We are speaking about 10 million victims, but 10 million survivors. And instead of trying to refer to the order at the perpetrator, the victimario, the responsible, the command, we have suffering together. It is our national tragedy. We have to overcome this situation. We need each other. In order to do that, we have created, because this is true, we have created institutions, enough stable economy. We have created a culture, but we have done it on the basis of the suffering of so very dramatic situation. And we are suffering from that sides. We need each other. We need each other in our differences. Fantastic. We have political differences. We have cultural differences. We have ethnicity differences. This is fantastic in Colombia. Let's go to create, to build up a future for our children. This is the idea. I mean, so looking to our victims and thinking on the future is for me the perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you, Father Drew. I want to open it up for questions. We do have a microphone. When you ask your question, please introduce yourself. And if you're a student, tell us what you're studying and what year you're in. So as I said, students have priority, so please don't be shy. Yeah, there's here.
Hi, we saw each other at the lunch too. I'm Lara. I'm a master's student in security studies, and I come from Italy. I have a question for you. Given your experience with meeting so many victims of the conflict, do you think that it is enough to provide truth in order to repair the victims, or is retributive justice necessary as well?
Retributive justice.
Obviously. And this is because this is a very good question, and I know the Truth Commission in Colombia is part of an institution which is called the System for Truth, Reconciliation, and Peace in the country, and is constituted by 3 different institutions: the Truth Commission, the Unity for Finding Disappeared People, and the Special Institution for Peace, the Special Jurisdiction for Peace. And the Special Jurisdiction for Peace have the responsibility of avoiding impunity in the country. And they are doing the judiciary process with the perpetrators, from the guerrillas, from the military, for people involved in the conflict. And they are about to pass sentences, but always with what we call restorative justice. It's not the same as the penal justice we say in America. Punitive justice. No, this is different. This is not revenge. And it's very interesting. Victims participate in the sort of penalty the perpetrators have to pay. They are reduced in liberty, but during the time they are limited in their liberty, they have to produce specific works and actions demanded by the victims for years. If they don't tell the truth, they have to penalty justice. I mean, the base is on truth, okay? And there is a court receiving the truth and analyzing if they really are telling the truth. If they are right in truth, they go to the restorative justice, which try not only to restore the victims, but also to restore the perpetrators. Because the idea is reconciliation of a country and not the polarization deepening.
Any other questions? There's two here. Maybe you can start with her. And then,
Hi, my name is Calla Cameron. I'm a doctoral candidate in the history department. 2023 marks 20 years since the Peruvian Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which has been a time of reflection for many of us involved in that process. How do you hope that we look back on the declaration in 20 years?
In 20 years, from here to there. Well, usually people say that the recommendations and the production, the reports of the truth commissions are useful in the future. I mean, that it takes years to a society to digest and especially, I imagine, especially for a commission like us, more than 9,000 pages is our report, 11 books. And but we're trying to mobilize the country now. I mean, we were very strong in the mobilization before the presentation of the report. After that, during 3 or 4 months, the commission was in the first place. Now is down. But we expect to recover the impetus, you know, because of the situation in the country. But I don't know. I hope we could do a good contribution, but I have to say also something. No, the report of the Colombian Truth Commission is not the truth. No. It's just a serious contribution to a search that we have to continue. We never arrive to that. The truth. We know that we consider what we have done is just sort of a takeoff platform to continue the search. You know, our document has to be submitted to analysis, to discussion. New data are going to appear, new interpretation of history, and this is extremely important to deepen on the truth without hesitation. I consider the document as a medium, you know, as a good medium, but not the end. The end is the reconciliation in the country. And as any medium, as the corn grain, as any medium, the medium has to die in order reconciliation to flourish, you know? So we are not defending, we have the truth. No. Come on, discuss. And this is our perspective now. Then, so working with the truth made you very human. I mean, it's difficulties and especially human truth.
we have another question.
Hello, Father. Again, Luz Adriana from Colombia. And my question kind of takes us into what is happening now in Colombia. And is thinking about the armed conflict as a problem of not seeing each other's humanity, and thinking that the violence or the armed conflict as a big internal war kind of like not ended, but like was resolved with the peace agreement. How do we deal with the fresh anger and pain of the ongoing violence? That one of the victims that have not been given a truth commission. And like, I don't want us to be here, 60 years from now being like, okay, after we signed the 2016, now we're doing another truth commission for the people. So how do we deal with that pain that is still happening in Colombia with other actors that are still in arms? How do we stop it from happening again, or to development to that point?
Good question, difficult question. I don't have the answer, obviously. I have to say that the conflict in Colombia has changed. This is not a conflict with the FARC. Imagine during the times of the conflict with the FARC, massacres of 100 people, 50 people. I remember in the Jesuit parish in Barranca Bermeja, we were celebrating the Mother Day, the Day of the Mother. It was the 18th of May. And the paramilitary came and they killed 32 young people in our parish. The guerrilla produced the massacre of Bojayá. It was a bomb in a church, and about more than 100 people were in the church, mostly children who died there. I mean, there was really, massacres were issues of terrific, immense issues. We have massacres still today. It's very sad. I know the proportion, but twice a month we have 3 people kill people in a massacre. And this is very sad, and especially the killing of leaders, and also when people from the FARC who signed the agreement are shot. This is also very sad, and we have the presence of the drug traffickers. But this is not the struggle. This is not the fight to take in power, to take the control of the state. FARC people who are doing that, they really wanted to be the political party who took control to hold the state. But we continue in a situation of a very violent, a society that incarnate violence among ourselves. Well, because of that, what I feel personally that I haven't lost hope, but I'm sure I'm going to die without having peace, total peace in Colombia. Because it will take years. But I have the decision of go back to my country to continue because of the victims.
Let's take the last 2 questions from a student and one from the gentleman right here, and then we would have to wrap up. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Reverendo Francisco. I am Daniel Pacheco from Colombia. I'm working for Mennonite Central Committee, and I have 2 specific questions. The first one is, from your perspective, what is the next step that Colombia, including the government, churches, organization, and the population, must take to achieve a significant change towards total peace? And the second one is, how important is the participation of the church in this process? Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for your question, and thank you for the extraordinary work done by the Mennonites in Colombia. Great, great people, women and men working for peace. in very difficult issues in Colombia all the time, and taking risks. Thank you indeed. Believe me, I will insist on reconciliation. And the churches are already working, the church as a whole is working everywhere on it. And also we have to work for inclusion. And this is something that I have to say I recognize in the Petro government, the inclusion of Afro-Colombians and indigenous people everywhere. The indigenous peoples and the Africans are so important because they protect nature. They protect the forest and the rivers. And we need that in Colombia immensely. Colombia is a country with a great potency in ecosystems. But we have to include them. And I mean, our country has to understand that we all have the same dignity, that your dignity doesn't depend in the color of yours or the education you have or your doctoral degree or your religious or nothing. We have it just because we are human beings. And Petro appointed Francia Marquez, an African Colombian woman, as vice president, our ambassador in the United States. I was talking with him this morning, is an African Colombian. The new Minister of Education is an African Colombian. Our representative in the United Nations is an indigenous woman. So this is a real change in Colombia. Inclusion is very important, but inclusion of young people and our campesinos in the economy.
Thank you. Then the gentleman here had the last question.
Thank you very much, especially for the honor of the last question. I'm not a student, obviously, but I am a Georgetown alum, and I studied here many years ago. Father Drew, thank you. In 1993, you were, in fact, my first professor of international humanitarian law and human rights when I was the human rights officer at the American Embassy in Bogota, en la calle 34. What you have done over the years has been amazing. But because we're at a Jesuit university, you know that I have to ask the devil's advocate question. So the devil's advocate question is, restorative peace is a fundamentally Jesuitical and tribal concept in the American Indian tradition, in many other traditions. It's not a Western concept. A Western Enlightenment concept of justice is very much more the idea of castigation and penalty. If restorative justice ultimately seeks the notion of full confession, full admission of guilt, full request for pardon and forgiveness, what happens when victims, humans, fallible humans, are unable and unwilling to forgive? And so we have the case of the Madre Soacha. Horrible cases, you know them, I won't go into detail here. Some of those mothers have forgiven the assailants. Other mothers cannot. How does restorative justice work when there is no human forgiveness?
Thank you for your question. This is really one of these questions that you never solve completely, but it's very important in these issues. First, we never in the Truth Commission ask a victim to forgive. We receive the victim with total respect. We try to identify ourselves with his or her situation, and Forgiveness is something, is so deep, is so personal commitment, means such a personal transformation, because I give you an example. Her name is Maria del Carmen. She's a Colombian. His family died in Machuca. Machuca was a bomb of the ELN army. They exploded a pipeline of oil, and there was fire, and all the vereda, the small town, was burned immediately. Maria del Carmen lost her husband and 3 children, and she is still burned. You see in her face. When Pope Francis came to Colombia, Maria del Carmen was there in the encounter Pope had with the victims. And Pope Francis asked her, "Hija, daughter, have you forgiven?" And he was very sincere. He said, "No, Holy Father. I have no hatred. I have not hatred. But till today, I have been unable to forgive." And she said, I hope one day God will forgive from within myself. God will forgive within myself the perpetrators that destroyed my family. And the Pope was confused, was moved, that he said, "This is the first lesson of theology I ever received." Yeah, this is a miracle. Really, this is a miracle. And as it's also a miracle when you have a perpetrator coming to tell the total truth, repenting himself, and accept that he have to repair. This is unpredictable, but that happens. That has happened many times in Colombia now.
So thank you, Father Deru, for an incredible experience, learning from your leadership of the Truth Commission. There are QR codes all over. There's a summary of the 11 volumes, 9,000 pages of the report in English available for everyone. There's also all of the documents, archives, testimonies are consigned in a webpage with everything from the Truth Commission, and that's going to be available for students. It's searchable. It's an incredible tool for anyone that wants to study the case of truth, the search for truth in Colombia. Thank you, Father, for being with us, and it has been a pleasure to have you at Georgetown.